Welcome to Crystals of Compassion. This video is an introduction to my channel, my vegan and spiritual past. So my name is Crystal and I have a blog called Crystals of Compassion. This blog combines my passion of veganism and spirituality. And I created it to help others. Just so you know a little bit about myself, I'm a student in Vancouver and I study math and philosophy. Probably thinking like, that's weird. Like, how do you become so interested in veganism and spirituality if you're a math major? Well, I'll tell you in a second. Okay, well, for one, I was always quite spiritual. I always knew I had a soul, and that was when I was younger. And then when I got older, I started to have instant knowledge of people and things. Just knowledge was just come to me like that. And it started to piss off people because I would know how they're feeling or what's going to happen next in their future. And they would always say, Crystal, you're just assuming. You can't just assume like that. But then I would always happen to be right. So I always had a bit of a spiritual gift. In my first year of university, I wanted to learn how to lucid dream. And if you don't know what that is, that's basically dreaming where you know you're dreaming. And once you know that you're dreaming, you can control your dream. And I was really interested in doing this, and so I did tons of research. And in my research, it said I needed to use a journal to write down my dreams, which I didn't want to do, but I did it because I really wanted to lucid dream. I also had to start meditating because that was also another thing I didn't want to do, but needed to do it in order to gain the skill of lucid dreaming. And all that meditation and more research and opening up my dreams and interpreting them has led me to have a very gradual spiritual awakening. And so now that I've gone through this spiritual awakening and now that I'm vegan, I still use my spiritual abilities and they're just completely enhanced. And I use these spiritual abilities for my own self-work and healing. And I just find it very awesome. So now I'm going to tell you how I became vegan. Back when I was 12 years old, my friends had dared me to go vegetarian for about a week. But I went home to my mom and told her, I didn't tell her about the dare at all. Instead, I told her that I wanted to go vegetarian because I thought it would be an excellent idea. And she told me that no, you have to get some source of protein, so you can cut out red meat and instead eat chicken and fish. And so I just did that, and I felt great. I never wanted to go back. I think I ate a burger maybe 2 weeks after doing that, and it just wasn't the same. I felt sick and stuff. So I did that till I was about 18, and when I was 18, I started working at Jimmy John's, and I started to notice how sketch meat is, just processed meat in general, and I just knew I didn't want to eat that. I mean, I knew I wanted to go vegetarian since I was 12, and especially when I had my own house with chickens, but I never would have imagined that I would want to go vegetarian so soon, even though that's 6 years later. So I went vegetarian, and I didn't even know what vegan really was until I started being a student at university. And I took a philosophy course on environmental ethics last June, and that's when I started to do my own research on the topic, because we had a paper about is it morally right to eat meat. I argued that it wasn't, but we also touched a bit about veganism. So when I did all this research and watched all the sad videos and basically crying every night, I decided that I was going to go vegan. But I just didn't have the tools or know how to go vegan, and all about it. Like, I just knew I couldn't continue living the way I did, but it just took me some time. And so when I did my research on veganism, I started researching on the raw diet. I'm like, well, if they're just living off of plants, just complete raw plants, they must be doing something right. Like, they must be getting their nutrients somehow. So I did that and fell in love with the concept of raw tofu, where you eat raw most of the day, and then your dinner is a high carb, low fat, vegan dinner that's cooked. And so that's what I started doing. I started transitioning, and I became vegan on the raw tofu. I've fallen out of that, but I still like to eat that way most of the time. I'm going to tell you some of the pros and cons of being vegan. So some of the pros: I did lose a little bit of weight, which could be a plus for some people. I had more energy, and I was able to, because I'm a runner, I was able to run faster and longer, which was good for me because I was training for a half marathon. I also didn't ever feel guilty about eating my food when I knew about the cruelty that happens in the industries. I constantly felt guilty about what I was eating, but after going vegan, it feels like freedom. I also became more spiritual. All my spiritual abilities and gifts were enhanced. I fell in love with cooking, whereas I didn't before, like cooking. I also was able to break my addiction to sugar, like processed sugar, like cakes and cookies, things like that. Because now I wasn't able to just go down the street to Tim Hortons and get a donut. I actually have to make things from scratch. And now here are some of the cons. I did experience some detox. Even though I was vegetarian, I did eat a lot of cheese and had that sugar addiction. So about 3 to 5 days in, I felt sick to my stomach, like I wanted to puke. I was sweating like uncontrollably, especially out of my right armpit, weird enough. And I just felt bloated and tired. But once I was past that point, it was heavenly. And so this is just a natural thing that will happen, especially if you're jumping from being an omnivore to a vegan. You're definitely going to experience some detox. It costed me a lot of money switching over to being vegan, and I highly suggest doing a different method that I did. I didn't want any more cruelty like stuff in my household, so I just started purchasing all those weird vegan things like agave nectar that I might need, coconut oil, things like that. But I do have a list of vegan essentials that you might need, or that you would like to have. I'll post that in the description box below. I also had no support. I knew one other vegan, and her and I our schedules didn't mesh well, so we didn't have any time to sit down and communicate or talk about this stuff or cook. So I was basically doing this by myself, and I realized later how really lonely it gets, and it can be really hard because the social aspect can be pretty hard when all your friends aren't eating vegan, and maybe they'll make fun of you or ask where you get your protein and stuff like that, and sometimes or question your decision and start throwing out thought experiments. And I was kind of like, I don't know how to answer these. Maybe you're right. Maybe going vegan isn't the best. But you know what? Once you have the tools and the research and a lot of support, it's really helpful. And so I suggest going out and looking at meetup groups or Facebook groups even around your local area. I also not only did I have the physical detox like I mentioned before, but I had emotional detox as well. And what that looks like happened there's a fly. Okay. There is what the emotional detox looks like is a couple months after I went vegan, I started experiencing emotional detox, and so a lot of times our emotions are like suppressed when we're addicted to certain foods and kind of have this blocking of toxins. And so when those toxins are gone, your emotions can freely flow, and sometimes it's a little bit too much to handle, hence the detox. But I find it's really good. It's a really good experience for healing, and it's kind of needed. You don't want those gross emotions to stay in you for years, and that's where you're going to start manifesting certain diseases, like things like cancer and stuff. So my emotional detox looked like I realized I had like severe anxiety, and I was able to work through that. And of course I'm still going to have it, but now I know I have it and I can manage it. Even though it was always there, but I never was able to work on it because my like path to my higher self was blocked. And that seems to be it for the pros and cons. And I think going vegan is really worth the decision, and everyone should consider it. And I think it's totally manageable, and I'm going to post lots more videos about tips to going vegan, my more spiritual experiences, and if you like to see like any videos, you can put down some recommendations down in the comment box, and stay tuned for more. And don't forget to visit my blog at crystalsofcompassion.com, like me on Facebook, and follow me on Twitter. Be sure to live vegan for the soul.